The massive alien ship appeared in Earth's orbit without warning. It was 3 times larger than anything humanity had ever built, its surface covered in strange symbols that glowed with purple light. On every screen across the planet, the same message appeared in perfect English. We are the Empire. We have conquered 847 star systems. You will surrender within 10 days, or we will destroy your world. Captain stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station, watching the alien vessel through the observation window. Around him, military officers shouted orders and ran between computer stations. Everyone looked terrified. Everyone except. He smiled. "Sir," Lieutenant looked at his captain with confusion. "Did you hear the message? They're going to attack us." "I heard it," said, still smiling. "Tell me, how many ships do we have?" 300, sir. They have 10,000. "And they think that matters," turned to face his young officer. "Call Admiral Park. Tell her we need to have a meeting, a very important meeting." Hours later, the delegation arrived at the orbital station. High Commander X was 9 feet tall with 4 arms and skin that looked like gray stone. Behind him, 6 other aliens walked in perfect formation, each carrying weapons that hummed with energy. Waited for them in the conference room. With him sat Admiral Park, a woman with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Beside her was Sora Lee, Earth's lead diplomat, who smiled politely at the aliens as they entered. "Humans," X's voice boomed through a translator device. "We have come to accept your surrender. You have seen our fleet. You know you cannot win." Leaned back in his chair. "Can I ask you something?" The alien commander tilted his massive head. "Speak." "How many wars have you fought in the last 600 years?" X seemed surprised by the question. "We conquered the Confederacy 600 years ago. Since then, all species have submitted without major resistance. Why do you ask?" "Just curious." Looked at, and she nodded slightly. "You see, Commander, we're a little different from the other species you've met. We've been fighting wars for our entire history, against each other mostly." "Primitive tribal conflicts," X said dismissively. "We have studied your history. You fight with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. We have energy weapons and shields that make us invincible." "Invincible," repeated the word slowly. "That's a dangerous word, Commander." Sora Lee spoke up, her voice sweet and innocent. "Commander X, I'm curious about your military history. When you fought how did they resist?" The alien commander seemed pleased by the question. "They met us in honorable battle, ship against ship. They fought bravely but predictably. We outnumbered them 5-1. They had no chance." "They fought honorably," Sora said, writing something on her tablet. "So they followed the same rules of warfare that you do." "Of course. All civilized species understand the proper way to conduct warfare. Frontal assault, shield to shield, the strongest fleet wins." Smile grew wider. Park cleared her throat. "Commander, we need time to consider your offer. 10 days, you said." 10 days. After that, we will destroy your military installations and force your surrender. Do not test our patience." X and his delegation turned and marched out of the conference room in their perfect formation. When the door closed, finally spoke. "Sir, what just happened?" "They told us exactly how to beat them," said, standing up and walking to the window. "They fight by rules. They fight predictably. They haven't faced real opposition in 600 years. Admiral Park stood beside him. "They think we're like the others. They think we'll either surrender or fight them the way they expect." "But we won't," Sora added, closing her tablet. "Because we're humans and we've spent thousands of years learning how to fight dirty." Turned to face his team. "Contact everyone. Every captain, every engineer, every pilot. We have 10 days to prepare." "Prepare for what, sir?" asked. "To show them what chaos looks like." The next morning, called a meeting with Earth's military commanders. In the room sat dozens of officers, each responsible for different parts of Earth's defense. They all looked worried. "They have 10,000 ships," began. "They have better shields, better weapons, and more experience than we do. If we fight them the way they expect, we will lose." "Then what do we do?" asked Captain O, commander of the drone fleet. "Surrender." "No," Admiral Park said, standing up. "We do what humans do best. We adapt, we improvise, we fight in ways they've never seen before." Engineer Nam raised his hand. "I've been studying their ship designs from the scans. Their shields are strong, but they rely on them completely. Their hulls are weak underneath." "Good," said. "What else?" "Their ships all follow the same design," added Shin, the commander of the fighter wing. "Same weapons, same tactics, same everything. They've standardized their entire fleet." "Which means," said, "if we find one weakness, it works against all of them." The intelligence director, projected an image on the wall. "I've been analyzing their communications. They use a central command structure. Orders come from the top and flow down through channels. It's efficient but slow." "Slow," repeated. "That's what we need. Speed, chaos, unpredictability." Bay, the psychological operations specialist, stood up. "I have an idea. What if we broadcast our military history to them? Show them what human warfare actually looks like." "Why would we do that?" asked. "Because," smiled, "we want them to be afraid. We want them to understand that they're not fighting a normal species. They're fighting a species that has been perfecting the art of killing for thousands of years." Over the next 9 days, Earth transformed. Ships were retrofitted with new weapons. Pilots trained in tactics that they had never encountered. Engineers built weapons that didn't rely on fancy technology but on simple, brutal physics. Stood on the command deck, watching the countdown clock. 3 hours until the deadline. "Are we ready?" he asked. Admiral Park nodded. "As ready as we'll ever be." "Sir," said, looking at his screen, "the fleet just appeared, 10,000 ships in formation." "Show me," said. The main screen lit up with the image of the alien fleet. They hung in space in perfect rows, their shields glowing, their weapons charged. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing had ever seen. A message came through. High Commander X's voice filled the command center. "Humans, your time is up. Surrender now or face destruction." Picked up the microphone. "Commander X, this is Captain. I have a message for you." "Speak your surrender," the alien commander said. "No," said, and his smile returned. "I just wanted to say welcome to Earth. I hope you brought enough ships." Then he turned to his crew and said the words that would change everything. "All units, weapons free. Show them what humans can do." The battle was about to begin. The fleet moved forward like a massive wall of metal and light. 10,000 ships, each one larger than the biggest human vessel, advanced in perfect formation. Their shields shimmered with purple energy, making them look like floating jewels against the darkness of space. On Earth's command station, alarms blared. Red lights flashed across every screen. Operators called out enemy positions and shield strengths. The air smelled like electricity and fear. Captain stood in the center of it all, perfectly calm. He watched the enemy fleet approach and remembered something his grandfather once told him. "The best way to fight a bigger enemy is to make them fight your way, not theirs." All ships spoke into his headset. "Remember your training, no formations, no predictable movements. Each captain is free to engage as they see fit. Make them chase you, make them confused, make them angry." Admiral Park stood beside him, her hands clasped behind her back. "This is it, everything we've prepared for." "Sir," Lieutenant said from his station, "they are hailing us again." "Put them through," said. High Commander X's face appeared on the screen. His gray skin looked even harder in the harsh light. "Humans, this is your final chance. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." "Commander," said politely, "I have a question. In all your conquests, has anyone ever said no to you and meant it? The alien's four eyes narrowed. Many have resisted, all have fallen. Then today will be interesting for both of us. All human ships execute Plan Chaos. Cut the transmission. On the tactical display, 300 human ships suddenly scattered in every direction. There was no pattern, no formation, no logical strategy that they could see. To them, it looked like complete panic. But it wasn't panic, it was the plan. Shin sat in the cockpit of his fighter, surrounded by 499 other pilots. They had been hiding behind Earth's moon, waiting for the signal. When it came, they screamed toward the fleet at full speed. "All wings, this is Dragon Leader," said into his radio. "Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to hurt them, target their sensors first, make them blind." The fighter swarm hit the formation like angry hornets. They didn't attack the big capital ships. Instead, they went after the sensor arrays, the communication dishes, the small but critical systems that held the fleet together. Antimatter missiles streaked through space. Human fighters twisted and turned in patterns that made no sense to targeting computers. The aliens tried to shoot them down, but their weapons were designed for large, slow targets, not small craft that moved like they were alive. "Direct hit on enemy cruiser sensors," one pilot shouted. "Same here, they're shooting blind." Rolled his fighter to avoid incoming fire and laughed. "That's right, keep getting angry. Angry enemies make mistakes." On the command station, Engineer Nam watched his screens with satisfaction. The ship modifications were working perfectly. Human vessels didn't have fancy energy shields like the. Instead, they had thick armor plating, point defense guns, and internal compartments that could seal off damage. Commander O spoke into his headset. "The enemy is focusing on our capital ships. They expect them to go down easy when shields fail. Release the drones." Captain O smiled from her control room. She had been waiting for this moment. With the press of a button, 5,000 automated drones launched from hidden positions around Jupiter. They had been hiding in the radiation belts where sensors couldn't detect them. The drones weren't fancy. They were simple machines with nuclear warheads and basic AI that told them one thing: find enemy engines and explode. They swarmed toward the fleet like a plague of metal locusts. "Drone Wave 1 engaging," said calmly, though her heart raced with excitement. "Drone Wave 2 moving to intercept enemy reinforcements. Drone Wave 3 executing minefield deployment." High Commander X watched from his command ship as the human forces attacked from seemingly every direction at once. His tactical officer struggled to keep track of all the threats. "Commander, the humans are not following any known tactical doctrine. Our prediction algorithms cannot determine their next moves." "They're primitives," X growled. "They're fighting in chaos because they don't know better. Increase firepower, destroy them all." But increasing firepower didn't help when you couldn't predict where the enemy would be. Ships fired their plasma cannons at spaces where human ships had been seconds before. By the time the shots arrived, the humans had moved somewhere else. I am watched the battle from Earth's intelligence center. Around him, dozens of computer specialists typed frantically on their keyboards. They weren't fighting with weapons. They were fighting with code. "Team 1, are we inside their network?" asked. "Affirmative, sir. The virus is spreading through their communication systems." "Good, activate Phase 2. In space, ships began experiencing strange problems. Navigation systems reported incorrect positions. Weapons targeting computers aimed at friendly ships instead of enemies. Communication channels filled with static and interference. They didn't understand what was happening. They had never needed strong cybersecurity because no one had ever dared to hack the Empire's sacred networks. Now, that overconfidence was destroying them from within. Bay stood in the Psychological Operations Center, surrounded by speakers and broadcasting equipment. She had prepared a special surprise for the begin transmission, she ordered. Suddenly, every communication channel was flooded with Earth's military history. Videos of ancient battles, naval warfare, aerial combat, tank divisions, guerrilla tactics, nuclear weapons. Thousands of years of human conflict compressed into a horrifying presentation. They watched their screens in confusion and growing fear. These humans had been fighting wars before the Empire even existed. They had developed hundreds of different ways to kill each other and had survived it all. One officer spoke to his commander. "Sir, these humans, they've been at war with themselves for their entire history. They're not civilized warriors. They're predators who learned to build spaceships." Admiral Park saw the effect of the psychological warfare on her tactical display. The fleet was beginning to slow down. Their perfect formation was breaking apart as ships tried to avoid threats that came from unexpected directions. "All ships," she broadcast to the human fleet. "The enemy is confused. Press the advantage. Engage at will." Captain watched as human ships closed in on the fleet. The aliens still had superior numbers and firepower, but they were fighting blind, confused, and scared. Said to his lieutenant, "Do you remember what I told you when this started? You said they haven't faced real opposition in 600 years, sir." "That's right. And do you know what happens to soldiers who never face real opposition? They forget how to adapt, sir." "Exactly," pointed at the tactical display. "Look at them. They're trying to regroup, trying to reform their perfect lines. They're doing exactly what their training tells them to do, but their training is 600 years out of date." A massive explosion lit up the space near Jupiter. One of the largest battleships had just been hit by 3 nuclear-tipped torpedoes. The aliens' shields had stopped the first 2, but the third had punched through and detonated inside the ship's hull. The vessel broke apart in slow motion, debris spinning away in all directions. "First capital ship kill confirmed," reported a human officer. Then another explosion, and another. Human forces were learning the weak points and exploiting them ruthlessly. High Commander X stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His fleet was taking casualties, real casualties. Species that fought the Empire didn't cause casualties. They died quickly and honorably. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. His tactical officer had no answer. The truth was simple but terrifying. The humans weren't fighting by any rules the Empire understood. They were fighting to win, using every dirty trick, every psychological advantage, every technological surprise they could create. And they were laughing while they did it. On an open channel that every could hear, a human pilot's voice came through. He was singing an ancient Earth song while shooting down enemy fighters. Other humans joined in, their voices mixing with the sounds of weapons, fire, and explosions. They had never heard anything like it. Who sings during battle? Who laughs while facing death? The answer was simple: humans did. Because to humanity, this wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a challenge, a problem to solve, a test of everything they had learned from 10,000 years of fighting themselves. And they were very good at solving problems. The Battle of Jupiter's orbit had been raging for 3 hours. Space was filled with debris, weapons, fire, and the burning remains of ships from both sides. The fleet still outnumbered humanity's forces, but the perfect formation they had arrived with was completely destroyed. Captain watched the tactical display and saw opportunity. They were trying to regroup, pulling their damaged ships back and forming new defensive lines. They were doing exactly what their military doctrine told them to do. "They're adapting to our chaos," Lieutenant observed. "They're learning." "Let them learn," said with a cold smile. "We'll just teach them something new. Contact. Tell him it's time for Operation Madness." In his fighter, Shin received the message and grinned. "All wings," you heard the captain. "Time to show them what human pilots really can do. Engage evasive pattern alpha crazy. Sir, one of his pilots asked nervously, did you just say alpha crazy? You heard me. Break every rule you know, fly like you're insane, make them think we've lost our minds. The human fighters suddenly began performing maneuvers that should have been impossible. They flew straight at capital ships, then twisted away at the last second. They spun in circles while firing weapons. They dove through debris fields at speeds that made targeting computers give up trying to track them. To the aliens, it looked like the humans had gone completely insane. And that was exactly the point. High Commander X watched his screens with growing frustration. What are they doing? This makes no tactical sense. Commander, his tactical officer said quietly, I don't think they care about tactical sense. I think they're trying to break our ability to predict them. Impossible, there must be patterns, everything has patterns. But human warfare had evolved beyond simple patterns. It was based on chaos theory, on making split-second decisions, on treating every battle like a game where the rules could change at any moment. Admiral Park received reports from across the battlefield. Human casualties were mounting, but so were losses. More importantly, the enemy was making mistakes. Ships were firing on their own allies. Formations were breaking apart. The disciplined military machine was beginning to crack. Activate surprise, ordered. Engineer Nam had been waiting for this moment. His greatest creation was about to be revealed. Hidden among the asteroid belt were dozens of simple but devastating weapons that used electromagnetic force to launch projectiles at incredible speeds. Batteries 1 through 20 target acquired, announced. Firing. The launched tungsten rods, each one weighing 10 tons and moving at 3% the speed of light. There were no engines to detect, no energy signatures to track, just solid metal moving fast enough to punch through any shield in the galaxy. The first rod hit a cruiser in the center. The ship's shields flickered for a moment, then the rod passed through like the shield wasn't even there. The cruiser exploded from the inside, torn apart by kinetic energy that couldn't be stopped. Second salvo firing. More rods streaked through space. More ships died. The aliens tried to target but they were too far away and too well hidden among the asteroids. This is cheating, an officer shouted over an open channel. A human voice responded immediately. Cheating. No, this is called using every advantage we have. You brought 10,000 ships, we brought ingenuity. Captain O's drone fleet was performing perfectly. The automated machines had learned the defensive patterns and were adapting their attacks in real time. Every time the aliens adjusted their shields to block one type of weapon, the drones switched to something different. Drone Squadron 5, target enemy communications array. Squadron 12, engage enemy fighters on the left flank. All remaining squadrons, begin minefield deployment around enemy retreat vectors. Was thinking 3 steps ahead. They would eventually realize they couldn't win this battle. When they tried to retreat, they would run straight into thousands of automated mines floating in space, waiting patiently. IM's cyber warfare teams were having the time of their lives. They had penetrated deep into the network and were now doing something that would have been considered war crimes in any civilized conflict. They were making the ships fight themselves. Team Alpha, redirect weapons targeting on enemy flagship section. Team Beta, introduce navigation errors in their helm controls. Team Gamma, broadcast fake distress signals from their own ships. The result was beautiful chaos. Ships reported being under attack from positions where no human ships existed. Navigation systems sent vessels on collision courses with each other. Communication channels were flooded with contradictory orders. The Empire's greatest weakness was revealed. They had built their entire civilization on trust and honor. They never imagined someone would lie, cheat, and hack their way through a battle. Humans had been doing exactly that for thousands of years. Bay watched her psychological operations bearing fruit. The communications were filled with confusion and fear. She decided to push them even further. Begin Phase 2 of Psychological Assault. Broadcast the nuclear weapons documentation. On every screen, detailed information about Earth's nuclear weapons appeared. Videos of mushroom clouds, data about radiation effects, statistics about how many times humanity had nearly destroyed itself with atomic weapons. The message was clear. Humans had developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet, and they had chosen not to use them. They had lived for decades under the threat of complete annihilation and had survived through sheer stubbornness and luck. What kind of species does that? What kind of species creates world-ending weapons and then just continues existing? One captain broadcast a message that was picked up by everyone. These humans are insane. They should have destroyed themselves centuries ago. Why are we fighting them? Because the Empire commands it, came the official response. But doubt had been planted, and doubt was poison to a military force built on absolute certainty. Captains saw the shift in the battle. They were no longer advancing. They were defending, trying to hold their positions, looking for a way to disengage. It was time for the final push. All ships, this is command. The enemy is breaking. Concentrate fire on their command vessel. Cut the head off the snake. Lieutenant pulled up the tactical data on the command ship. Sir, it's too well defended. We'd lose half our fleet trying to get close enough. Who said anything about getting close? Turned to his communication officer. Get me. Tell him I need the special package delivered to these exact coordinates. The special package was a weapon that humanity had hoped never to use. A missile with a fusion warhead powerful enough to vaporize a small moon. It wasn't as destructive as the antimatter weapons they used, but it was more than enough to crack open even the strongest shields if it hit in exactly the right place. The missile launched from a ship disguised as a damaged freighter. They had been ignoring it, thinking it was fleeing the battlefield. By the time they detected the missile, it was already too close to stop. The fusion warhead detonated 50 meters from the command ship. The explosion was bright enough to be seen from Earth. When the light faded, the command vessel was still there, but its shields were gone, its hull was cracked, and half its systems were offline. High Commander X stumbled on his bridge as the ship shook from the impact. Alarms screamed. Officers shouted reports about failing systems. For the first time in 600 years, a commander faced the possibility of actual defeat. Get us out of here, X ordered. All ships retreat to Rally Point Omega. But there was no Rally Point Omega. The humans had hacked their navigation computers and changed the coordinates. When the ships tried to retreat, they flew straight into O's minefield. Explosions bloomed across the battlefield as automated mines detected enemy vessels and detonated. The retreat turned into a chaotic scramble for survival. Admiral Park stood on the command deck and made a decision that surprised everyone. All ships, let them run, but follow them, harass them, make sure they remember this day for the rest of their lives. Ma'am, an officer asked, we're not going to finish them. No, said firmly. We're going to let them go home and tell everyone what happened here. We're going to let them spread the word that humanity cannot be conquered. Captain understood immediately. A defeated enemy tells a story. A destroyed enemy tells no story at all. We need the galaxy to know what happened here. Shin's fighters followed the retreating fleet, picking off stragglers and damaged ships. They didn't destroy the whole fleet. They just made sure the survivors would never forget the terror of fighting humanity. On Earth, celebrations began. People poured into the streets, crying and laughing and hugging strangers. They had faced the impossible and won. But in the military command center, the mood was different. They knew this was just the beginning. They would return, maybe with more ships, maybe with new tactics. The war wasn't over. It had barely begun. The fleet limped away from Earth like wounded animals. Of the 10,000 ships that had arrived, only 6,000 remained functional. The rest were debris, floating monuments to imperial arrogance. High Commander X sat in his damaged command chair, staring at screens that flickered with unstable power. Around him, his officers worked in silence. No one wanted to speak. No one wanted to acknowledge what had just happened. "Commander," his communication officer finally said, "we're receiving messages from the Emperor demands a report." X closed his 4 eyes. How could he explain this? How could he tell the Emperor that 300 primitive ships had defeated the Empire's finest fleet? That humans fought without honor, without rules, without any respect for proper warfare? "Tell the Emperor," X said slowly, "that we have encountered something unexpected." On Earth's command station, Captain watched the enemy fleet disappear into the distance. Human ships followed at a safe distance, making sure they actually left the solar system. "Status report," ordered. Lieutenant read from his screen. "We lost 87 ships, 2,300 casualties, another 15 ships heavily damaged but repairable. And the enemy? 4,000 ships destroyed or disabled, estimated 40,000 casualties. Commander, we did it. We actually did it." Admiral Park entered the command center, looking tired but satisfied. "Good work, but don't celebrate too much. This battle is over, but the war is just starting." "I know," said. "They'll return with more ships and new tactics. They'll adapt to what we did here." "Then we need to adapt faster," replied. "I want full analysis of the battle within 24 hours. Every tactic that worked, every mistake we made. We need to be better next time." Across the galaxy, something unexpected was happening. The battle had been broadcast on every frequency, picked up by hundreds of different species that lived under rule. For the first time in 600 years, they had watched the Empire lose. On the planet, former of the Confederacy, an old warrior watched the footage with tears in her eyes. Her people had fought honorably and lost. She had spent her life believing the Empire was unbeatable. Now she knew the truth. The Empire could bleed. The Empire could be defeated. All it took was someone willing to fight without following their rules. On the mining world of 7, workers whispered to each other in the dark tunnels. "Did you see? The humans won. The Empire ran away." "Impossible. The Empire never runs." "I saw it with my own eyes. 300 ships beat 10,000. How did they do it?" "They fought smart. They fought dirty. They fought like they wanted to win instead of fighting like they wanted to be honorable." The whispers spread. Planet by planet, system by system, the story of Earth's victory traveled across the galaxy, and wherever it went, it planted seeds of rebellion. Sora Lee, Earth's diplomat, sat in her office reviewing the same footage. She saw something the military commanders didn't see. She saw a political opportunity. "Computer, open a communication channel. Encryption level maximum. I need to contact every resistance group, every rebel cell, every subjugated species in the Empire." "Ma'am," her assistant said nervously, "that's going to make us a target." "We're already a target," Sora replied. "They will come back no matter what we do. But if we can inspire others to resist, to fight back, then the Empire will have to deal with rebellions on 1,000 worlds. They can't conquer everyone at once." She began composing a message, simple words that would change the galaxy forever. "To all who suffer under Imperial rule, we are humanity. We faced the Empire's fleet with a tiny force and sent them running. We don't have superior technology. We don't have greater numbers. What we have is the will to fight, the courage to resist, and the stubbornness to never give up. If we can do it, so can you. The Empire is not invincible. The Empire can be defeated, and we will help you do it." Engineer Nam walked through the wreckage of a damaged human ship, taking notes on his tablet. Around him, repair crews worked to salvage what they could, but wasn't here to repair. He was here to learn. The hull breach on Section 7, how did it happen? Plasma cannon, sir, punched right through our armor. Examine the damage carefully. Interesting. The metal melted and then refroze. We need stronger armor, or we need a way to deflect energy weapons. He moved to another section where a captured weapon lay on a work table. Human scientists were carefully taking it apart, studying every component. What have we learned? Asked. The power source is incredible, sir. Compact fusion reactor smaller than a car battery. The energy efficiency is far beyond anything we can build. Then we'll learn to build it, said firmly. We have 10 ships that we captured or salvaged. Take them apart, every single piece. I want to know how their shields work, how their engines work, how everything works. We won this battle with tactics and courage. Next time I want us to win with better technology too. Captain O was already thinking about the next battle. Her drone fleet had performed excellently, but she had seen the problems. They had eventually adapted their targeting systems to track the small machines better. Many drones had been destroyed in the final hours of the battle. We need smarter drones, she told her engineering team. Machines that can learn faster, adapt quicker, make decisions without waiting for orders from us. Ma'am, that's talking about artificial intelligence. Real AI, not just smart programs. I know what I'm talking about, said. They use predictable computers. We need unpredictable ones. We need machines that can be just as chaotic and creative as human pilots. Shin sat in the pilot-ready room with his surviving fighter crews. They were drinking, laughing, and telling stories about the battle. But underneath the celebration saw the exhaustion. Many of his pilots had been flying for 6 hours straight, pulling maneuvers that pushed their bodies to the limit. We need better pilots, said to his second-in-command. I want a training program that's twice as hard as what we have now. I want pilots who can fly in their sleep. I want reflexes so fast that the enemy can't even track us. Sir, we're already training harder than any military in history. Then we'll train harder than that, replied. They will study the battle recordings. They'll learn our moves. Next time we need to be even better. I am sat in the intelligence center, watching the communications they had intercepted. The enemy was arguing among themselves. Some wanted immediate revenge. Others wanted to study humanity more carefully before attacking again. A few were even suggesting that maybe Earth wasn't worth the trouble. The Empire is divided, reported to Admiral Park. This defeat has shaken them. Some commanders are questioning whether the Emperor's orders are wise. Good, said. Fear is a weapon too. If we can make them afraid to attack us, that's just as good as destroying their ships. But ma'am, some of their commanders are calling for total war. They want to bring 100,000 ships next time. They want to exterminate humanity completely. Let them try, said coldly. Every ship they send to Earth is a ship they can't use to hold down their empire. The more they focus on us, the more opportunities other species will have to rebel. Bay was conducting interviews with prisoners. The aliens were confused and frightened, which was exactly what wanted. Confused enemies gave away information. Tell me, asked one prisoner, what did you think when you saw human pilots singing during battle? The soldier trembled. We thought you were insane. We thought you had all gone mad. Maybe we are mad, smiled. Or maybe we just understand something you don't. War isn't about honor, it's about winning, and we'll do whatever it takes to win. Back on the command station, Captain stood at the observation window looking at Earth below. The planet glowed blue and white, peaceful and beautiful. Hard to believe that just hours ago, it had been threatened with destruction. What are you thinking? Admiral Park asked, joining him at the window. I'm thinking about what comes next, said. We surprised them once. We can't surprise them again. They'll adapt. They'll change their tactics. They'll bring more ships. So what do? We do what humans always do, replied. We evolve. We adapt. We become something they can't prepare for. They have 600 years of military tradition. We have 10,000 years of learning how to survive against impossible odds. And if they bring 100,000 ships, smiled that same confident smile he had shown High Commander X. Then we'll figure out how to beat 100,000 ships. That's what we do. That's what we've always done. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Jupiter's orbit. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Empire was in chaos. Small rebellions had erupted on 40 different worlds. Nothing major yet, just protests and minor acts of sabotage. But it was enough to worry the Emperor. For 600 years, the Empire had ruled through fear and overwhelming force. Now that fear was cracking. High Commander X stood before the Emperor's throne, trying to explain the impossible. My Emperor, the humans are different from any species we have encountered. They don't fight by the rules. They don't value honor over victory. They are willing to do anything to win. The Emperor, an ancient who had lived for 300 years, studied his commander carefully. You are telling me that 300 ships defeated 10,000 of our finest vessels? Yes, my Emperor, but it wasn't just their ships. It was their thinking. They fight in ways we cannot predict. They use weapons we consider primitive but devastating. They hack our systems, lie to us, trick us. They have no honor. Then we must teach them honor, the Emperor said coldly. Gather 100,000 ships. We will return to Earth and show them what happens when you defy the Empire. X bowed, but inside he felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. 100,000 ships sounded overwhelming, but he had thought 10,000 ships were overwhelming too. What if the humans had another trick? What if they were even more prepared this time? On Earth, Captain received the intelligence report from IM that were preparing a massive fleet. 100,000 ships. That's a lot of ships, Lieutenant said, trying to keep his voice steady. It is, agreed. But they're making a mistake. They're sending even more ships to us, which means they're pulling forces away from their empire. Every ship they bring here is a ship that can't stop rebellions on their own worlds. Admiral Park entered the briefing room carrying a data pad. I've been in contact with Sora. Her diplomatic efforts are working. 15 different species have contacted us, asking for help in fighting the Empire is starting to crumble from within. Can we help them? Asked. Not directly, said. We don't have the resources to fight on multiple fronts, but we can give them something more valuable than ships. We can give them knowledge. She activated the holographic display, showing a map of the galaxy. We're sharing our tactical data with every rebel group that contacts us. We're teaching them how to fight asymmetrically, how to use guerrilla tactics, how to turn the Empire's strengths into weaknesses. Nodded, we're teaching them to fight like humans. Exactly. And while they are sending 100,000 ships to Earth, their empire will be burning behind them. Engineer Nam had been working 20-hour days for the past 3 months. His team had reverse-engineered the captured technology and combined it with human innovation. The result was something new, something the galaxy had never seen. Admiral presented his creation. I call them hybrid ships. They have shield technology but improved with human redundancy systems. They have human armor and weapons. They have AI-assisted targeting combined with human intuition. They're not perfect, but they're better than anything either species could build alone. How many can you build before the return? Asked. We've already built 200. With the resources from the mining colonies and the shipyards working around the clock, I can have 500 ready in 6 months. You have 3 months, said firmly. They won't wait longer than that. Then I'll need more help, a lot more help. Within days, shipyards across the solar system were running at maximum capacity. Engineers from every nation worked together, sharing knowledge and resources. The human species had always been divided, fighting among themselves. But when faced with an external threat, they became something terrifying. unified. Captain O watched her new drone fleet with satisfaction. These weren't the simple machines from the first battle. These were adaptive AI systems that could learn from experience, coordinate with each other, and make tactical decisions independently. Run Scenario 17, ordered. On the simulation screens, 10,000 drones engaged a fleet 10 times their size. The drones didn't fight in formation. They fought as a swarm, each unit supporting the others while maintaining individual creativity. The simulation showed the drones winning with minimal losses. "Beautiful," whispered. "Now build me 50,000 of them." Shin had been training new pilots using VR simulations based on the battle data. He pushed them hard, harder than any training program in history. Some quit. Some broke down crying. But those who survived became something special. "You're not just pilots," told his graduates. "You're weapons, you're chaos given direction. When you fly, you don't think about formations or tactics. You think about one thing, survival, and you survive by making the enemy's life hell." The new pilots cheered. They had seen the footage of the first battle. They had watched Swing dance through enemy fire like it was a game. They wanted to be that good. They wanted to be legends. Bay expanded her psychological warfare operations to include the entire galaxy. She was broadcasting humanity's message to every corner of the Empire. "People of the galaxy," her message said, "the Empire tells you that resistance is futile. The Empire tells you that they are invincible. We are humanity and we prove them wrong. We are not stronger than the Empire. We are not more advanced, but we are more stubborn. We refuse to give up. We refuse to surrender, and we invite you to join us in that refusal." The message was simple, but it was powerful. On 100 worlds, people watched and whispered. On 1,000 worlds, rebels began planning their moves. The galaxy was waking up. IM's intelligence network had grown to include informants across the Empire. Disaffected soldiers, conquered species looking for hope, even some imperial officers who secretly believed the Emperor's policies were wrong. "Admiral," reported, "I have something interesting. There's a faction within the military that doesn't want this war to continue. They think it's wasteful and dangerous. They're a minority, but they exist." "Can we communicate with them?" asked. "I already have. They're willing to provide intelligence about the upcoming attack. In exchange, they want protection after the war ends." "Tell them they have a deal," said immediately. "Any information that saves human lives is worth the cost." Sora Lee had become something unexpected, the face of galactic resistance. Her speeches were broadcast across 1,000 worlds. Her simple message of hope and defiance inspired millions. "The Empire wants you to believe that submission is the only option," Sora said in her latest broadcast. "But submission is death by another name. You lose your freedom, your culture, your identity. Better to fight and die free than to live as slaves. And if you fight smart, if you fight together, you won't die at all. You'll win." On Earth, preparations continued at a frantic pace. Every able-bodied person contributed somehow. Some built ships. Some trained as soldiers. Some worked in factories producing weapons. The entire species had become a war machine, but a war machine that still laughed, still sang, still told jokes while building instruments of destruction. Captain stood in the new command center, a massive facility built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. It was designed to survive anything short of a planet-cracking weapon. From here, he would coordinate humanity's defense against 100,000 ships. "Are we ready?" Admiral Park asked him. "No," said honestly. 100,000 ships is overwhelming. Even with all our tricks and tactics, even with the new technology and better training, we're going to take heavy losses." "But can we win?" Was quiet for a moment, thinking about everything humanity had accomplished. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had survived world wars and nuclear weapons. They had survived themselves, which was perhaps the hardest thing any species could do. Yes, he finally said, we can win, because we're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for every species that the Empire has conquered. We're fighting to prove that tyranny doesn't have to be permanent. And most importantly, we're fighting because we're too stubborn to do anything else. Smiled, that's the spirit. When they arrive, show them what humanity really looks like when we're serious. Oh, I intend to, replied. Last time we were surprised, we were unprepared. We won through quick thinking and desperation. This time we're ready. This time we've had months to prepare. This time we'll show them why you never give humans time to think. The fleet was gathering at the edge of the galaxy. 100,000 ships, the largest military force ever assembled in known history. High Commander X stood on his repaired command ship, looking at the armada around him. It should have made him feel confident. It should have made him feel invincible. But all he felt was unease. Somewhere out there, the humans were waiting, and humans were never more dangerous than when they had time to prepare. All ships, X broadcast, we leave for Earth in 1 week. This time there will be no mercy. This time we will show the galaxy what happens to species that defy the Empire. But even as he said the words, he wondered if he was trying to convince the fleet or convince himself. Back on Earth, humanity waited. The whole planet had transformed into a fortress. Weapons platforms orbited every major planet. Minefields spread through the solar system like spiderwebs. Shipyards produced vessels around the clock. And most importantly, 3 billion humans looked at the stars and said the same thing in 1,000 different languages. Bring it on. The second battle for Earth was coming. And this time, humanity wasn't going to just win. They were going to send a message that would echo across the galaxy for 1,000 years. Never threaten humanity unless you're prepared to face something that has spent 10,000 years learning how to kill efficiently, think creatively, and survive impossible odds. They were about to learn that lesson the hard way. And somewhere in the command center, Captain smiled that same confident smile and said 4 words that summarized humanity's entire attitude. Let them come.